Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
Welcome. This morning, we're on a pretty tight schedule, so I'd appreciate it if everybody would stick to the time frames, and hopefully we can get through with this meeting. We've got guests coming from out of town this afternoon from the Board of Governors, and we're meeting with them at 1 o'clock in another location. So with that said, I'd like to call on Susan O'Connor for the adoption of minutes for the Audit and Operations Committee.
I'd like to call the Audit and Operations Committee to order, please, and call on Kim Brown to give us the roll call.
Trustee O'Connor.
Here.
Trustee Dana.
Here.
Trustee Walton. 2 present.
Thank you. You know, you've all been given ample time to review the minutes from our May 22nd committee meeting. So if there are no corrections or changes, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And my apologies, I did not ask if there was any further discussion. Hearing none, the motion stands approved. And so if there is no further items to discuss, I move to adjourn.
Thank you. I'd now like to call on Mort O'Sullivan for adoption of the minutes for the Finance and Facilities Committee.
I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Kim Brown for a roll call.
Trustee O'Sullivan.
Here.
Trustee Cleveland. Trustee Lewis.
Here.
All present.
You've all been given ample time to review the minutes of our May 23rd committee meeting. If there are no corrections or changes, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If there's no further items to discuss, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. I'd now like to call the Executive Committee meeting to order. Kim Brown, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Bear.
Here.
Trustee O'Sullivan.
Here.
Trustee O'Connor.
Here.
Trustee Jones. Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Cleveland.
Here.
5 present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You've had the opportunity to review the minutes of the Executive Committee meeting from May 23rd, 2014. Are there any changes or discussion? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The meeting stands adjourned. I'd now like to call on Jay Patel for his committee minutes for the Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Call the meeting to order. Can I get Kim Brown to please do roll call?
Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Friedland.
Present.
Trustee May. 2 present.
Thank you, ma'am. You all have been given an ample time to review the minutes of our May 23rd committee meeting. If there are no corrections and or changes, may I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
A second. Any discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. If there are no other further items to discussion, this meeting is adjourned.
Now I'd like to call on Richard Huff to convene the Academic Affairs Committee for the adoption of their minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm the only member of the committee present, so I recommend we delay approval of our minutes until our next committee meeting.
All right, thank you. I'd now like to call the full board meeting to order. Is there anybody joining us by conference call? If so, please identify yourself at this time. Trustee Terry and Trustee Jones are not available today. Kim Brown, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Bear.
Here.
Trustee Cleveland. Here. Trustee Dana.
Here.
Trustee Friedland.
Present.
Trustee Huff.
Here.
Trustee Jones. Trustee Lewis.
Here.
Trustee May. Trustee O'Connor.
Here.
Trustee O'Sullivan.
Here.
Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Terry. Trustee Walton.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody, particularly our newest trustee, Ethan Friedland, our SGA president. I've asked Ethan to serve on the Student Affairs Committee. Ethan's a political science major and also has been appointed to serve on the as internal vice president of the Florida Student Organization or Association. So congratulations to you. He's also a bruiser.
All right.
Thank you.
We're happy to be webcasting today's meeting. Time's been set aside during our meeting to allow public comments on matters coming before the board today. If you want to speak on an item on the agenda, please fill out a form available on the table located at the entrance door. All forms must be provided to the Board of Trustees Recording Secretary, Becky Lunsford. Becky, hold your hand up. In the absence of public comment period, in advance of public comment period, I do ask that the speakers get together and appoint a spokesman for a group if you have a number of people who would like to speak on any one subject. We've done our best to notify everybody of that requirement well in advance. And I would tell you today, before we get to that point, that this board has made the decision to allow a non-action item to be presented if somebody cares to present on that item. I'd now like to call on President Benz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will give a brief report on the happenings at the University of West Florida since the board last met. I also want to begin by welcoming our newest trustee, Ethan Friedland. Welcome and congratulations on your election as student body president. And we all look forward to working with you and what you will bring to our board. As far as federal and state news, Janice Gilley is going to bring us up to speed later on in the meeting, so I will drill right down to what's been going on campus. First of all, we hosted in May a delegation from China, and they are our partner university, Sichuan International University in China, and they came here to celebrate the opening of the new Confucius Institute. The Confucius Institute is funded by the Chinese government, and it is to provide instruction with Chinese instructors on Chinese language and culture. The second thing is that as you know, we have a coalition of presidents in Northwest Florida of colleges and us as a university. We meet together quarterly. We are unchartered. We are informal. We talk about the news of the day and make plans that further all of us. And one of the programs that we are doing is, it's called sort of like a direct connect. We call it direct admit, where we enter into a relationship with each of the state colleges in our Northwest Florida region, which extends to Tallahassee Community College. And when they enter into an agreement with us, it makes transition to their graduates as students transition to UWF much easier. They don't have to pay a lot of fees, they don't have to get new shots, they don't have to do all the things that are annoying and expensive. And so I want to tell you that we signed the agreement with Tallahassee Community College on May the 30th, and they are a wonderful partner and complement us very well. President Murtaugh is a great guy. Now, the next thing I want to bring you up to date on is the accreditation by SACS COC. And it is, you have to get re-accredited as an institution. This is institution-wide every 10 years. Every fifth year, in between, you have to provide like an update. But we are up for what they call reaffirmation, and it is only drop dead important. I want to tell you that hundreds of people at your university are working on this, and that we have a compliance report that is due in September, and that we are on track. It is thousands of pages long, and they read that and they comment on it, they review it, and then they will send a team to campus in the spring to do an on-site visit. So I want to let you know that we are on track, and there are hundreds of people here working on that. On East Campus, many of you were here in April at the event when we broke ground on the restaurants and shops that are going to go out at our east entrance. It's funded by our food service vendor Chartwell's, opening in spring of 15. Now I want to switch to research. On research, UWF submitted 109 proposals for the last fiscal year, for a total of $48 million plus. What was requested? We received 75. 75 of 109 is not bad. And I'll take those odds any day. And it totaled $23 million. So that's money to the good. You'll see it show up in the budget presentation too. Now I want to talk about development highlights. This is a very different kind of report you're hearing from me and through Vice President Kelly. As always, they set goals. We've set goals every year since I've been president for fundraising. We've never hit it. Not only did we hit it this year, but we exceeded it. We set the goal at $3.5 million, and today we are in excess of $4 million. That surpassed the goal. Thank you. And they set out to establish 12 new endowments, and they got 13. They wanted to achieve 40 new gifts of $10,000 or more. They got 50. Last year, we had a record-breaking participation in our annual giving of faculty and staff at 54.9%. This year, we broke another record with 58.7%. So all Dr. Kelly's been doing is breaking records this year, and that's just fine with all of us. We also received 5 gifts since the your board met last. We got $1 million, 1 million clams from an anonymous donor towards the College of Business. We received $100,000 from the Nicholson Irrevocable Trust for a scholarship endowment. Anacor gave us $70,000 in kind of gift of video hardware and systems to the Innovation Institute. Jim Cronley, who many of us know, gave $25,000 to UWF football. We received $25,000 from Joan Seifert for a scholarship endowment and research initiatives. This is incredible news. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, and your team. Now, I want to bring to your attention some of the highlights of our student accomplishments. UWF students Raymond Matheny and Elizabeth McDonald. Matheny is a senior international studies major. They were selected to participate in the Florida House internship. That is a house in Washington, D.C. that is a refuge sometimes for us in hot and cold days, and also serves to promote Florida. These were $6,000 scholarships. They are there now. And our thanks go really to Belle there, Mr. Chairman, for she pushed very hard to get this money and for these scholarships. She couldn't choose between 2. She only gives 1, but they chose 2, so she had to go out and raise more money. But she did, and we're very grateful to Mrs. Bear.
Where did she find that, Louis?
Okay. The second one is UWF student Denisha Merriweather got a Gilman International Scholarship, which awards $5,000 for a study abroad experience. And it is sponsored by the United States Department of State, Bureau of Cultural and Educational Affairs. Denisha is a senior in interdisciplinary social sciences, and is completing her internship in the Dominican Republic this summer, where it is very hot, working in an orphanage where it is very poor in Santo Domingo. The third thing, 2 UWF engineering students, I can't pronounce their names, but I'll try, Thamasali Ella Permuel and Abdul Huda. They are senior computer and electrical science engineering students. They placed second out of 20 teams at the NASA Hybrid Rocket Competition. Rockets. First time a team from UWF has ever participated. It's sponsored by the NASA Florida Space Grant Consortium, the Florida Space Institute, and the Association of Rocketry. They're building rockets, they're shooting them up, and they're getting second place, first try. 5 UWF senior chemistry students have recently been awarded significant stipends and fellowships to PhD programs at top colleges and universities and programs across the state, across the country. So they are going to represent us well. UWF student Timothy Jones received the President's Volunteer Service Award, that's United States President, for assisting fellow veterans at the University of West Florida. 11 students from the College of Business just made a trip to New York City. They visited Morgan Stanley, they visited the Federal Reserve, they visited the New York Stock Exchange to learn about the daily ins and outs of the world of investment and finance. Dr. Krieger, Dr. O'Keefe, Dr. Ranelli set it up, and the students that went were undergraduate finance majors or MBA students. And they got a unique opportunity to see how the world and how the finance industry works. Also in February, the new UWF Innovation Institute launched the Center for Cybersecurity, hacking, in other words, preventing it and doing it and preventing it again. It is a hub for research and opportunities to move high-demand career fields through collaborative partnerships. Dr. Ashika Bagui is the director of the center. This center will promote in itself, the center is itself, a pipeline of academic programs and certificates that are deeply connected to Northwest Florida technology, community, and industry. The last item is UWF men's tennis. They entered the NCAA Division II championships as the #1 national ranking. They were there all year, all season, and they were the favorite, and they lived up to their billing. And it wasn't easy. They had to work for every point, it seemed like. It was no fun to be there. I was there. It was no fun. They won, but it was tough. This is the men's tennis team 3rd national championship. So this isn't their first rodeo. This is their 3rd rodeo. And I believe they were runner-up last year to the national championship. And it is our 8th overall national championship for the University of West Florida in all of our sports. So tonight we're going to have our all boards dinner at Scenic Hills at 6 p.m., 5:30 social. Tomorrow we're going to have the joint board strategic meeting, a planning meeting. And with that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my report.
Thank you. I think the university is getting used to champions.
Yes, we
whether
have.
it's scholastic or athletic, and certainly we appreciate Dave's great work, and if you'll join me in just recognizing Dave for his new. Congratulations to you, Dave. All right, I'd now like to call on Judy Benz and Dr. Kevin Bailey.
Thank you, Chair Bear. It is my honor to ask to come to the podium Athletic Director of the Year, Dave Scott.
Thank you. It's a tremendous honor to serve this university that I'm a graduate from and enjoy coming to work every day. But this morning, we want to honor some of our student athletes, and It's my honor to introduce Coach Derek Racine, who's served at the university for over 16 years. As Dr. Bentz mentioned, 3 national championships and Coach of the Year. And before he has a minute to share those experiences, we're going to show a short video of the national championship experience.
Everybody just fought so hard. It was great. I mean, doubles was like a war out there, and somehow, I don't know how we did it, but we pulled off all 3 doubles, and I just knew then it was going to be our day.
The feeling is incredible, you know. At first, I don't know, we kind of struggled at the beginning of the tiebreak, but I don't know, at the end, like all the support with these guys, it was amazing.
It's priceless. I have no words to describe the moment that I'm feeling right now. We worked the whole year for that, and I have no words to describe. It's just an unbelievable feeling. That was crazy because I knew it was match point, but I was so tired, so I didn't even think about it. I was just playing, and then I realized it was over and everybody was running. That's a great feeling.
University of West Florida is a special place. Ever since we were founded, we take great pride in personal attention to students, and this is the epitome of personal attention to students. I would not be anywhere else in the world. This is the best thing that a university can do, is to win the national championship, and it's just a joy for the president to be able to do it. It's the epitome of the University of West Florida.
Now I look at some of our alumni here that come from years past, and you know, to have your president here jumping around on the court. I mean, West Florida is just such a special place. Derek does a great job with the student athletes. They're great representatives of our program, and you know, today was just a great day for the University of West Florida. Coach Derek Racine.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, as you can see, our sports information department does an outstanding job. Sean put that video together, I think, in about an hour. I don't know how he does it, but he does a great job. First of all, I want to thank all of you here on the board for making this such a great place to work, but most importantly, a great place for students to come to school. A big part of any of us coaches' job is recruiting, and when we have a product like we have here at University of West Florida, it makes our job easy. So I really want to thank you for that. It's a great place. We get students here, and they love it here. And I just want to thank you for all your support. I know Mr. Patel gave me a nice text there after the championship. I really appreciate that. And then I want to give credit for the championship. First of all, to my players, a great group of kids. As you can see in the video, very passionate about their sport, very passionate about their school. They represent the University of West Florida in an awesome way. They're always wearing West Florida gear. They're, very, very well behaved, and just the results on the court hopefully bring good and positive recognition to the university. And then I want to, thank all our administrative staff, all the way from the very top of our university, from our president. As you can see, Dr. Benz was a big part of our championship. The kids really feel it. They feel like they're playing for something greater than themselves, which is what you need in these things. It's just so tough out there, and if you're just playing for yourself, you can't do it. So you've got to have that feeling that you're playing for greater than yourself. From our athletic director, Dave Scott, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and for all our administrative staff. We had a great support down there. Being in Orlando was great. I know Dr. Bailey was down there, Tony was down there, Brett Berg was down there, Megan was down there a few days. So we just really had a great support staff down there. All our SIDs, as you can see, they do a great job. Our athletic trainers, and just all the way down the line. It's a group effort. With today's social media, we were talking about it earlier, how things like this go viral, Facebook and all that. It's just a great thing. They had the matches on live webcast, so people from all over the world, my players' parents were able to watch. They had live scoring, so just a really good event that with today's technology, we've just had an outpouring of people that have watched it and people that have felt a part of it. So we're just a great year, and I thank you once again for all your support, because without the support from the top, none of this is possible. So it really is a great experience and a great day to be in Argo. Thank you.
This time, I'd like to take a brief picture with the President of SGA, Vice President of Student Affairs, the Chair, and the President of the University.
So that trophy, that one that we've hugged and kissed so much, come on.
So much for showbiz. of you have been given the opportunity ahead of time to review the minutes of the March 26, 2014 Board of Trustees meetings, as well as the May 14th conference call meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. All right. It's now time for our our committee reports, and I'm going to start out with the executive committee report. I'll start first with the May 23rd meeting. We accepted the revision and updates to the UWF Foundation bylaws presented by Dr. Brendan Kelly, which will more closely align the foundation board officer and staff positions and titles with the organizational outlines of the other UWF boards. We also approved the UWF 2014-15 metric improvement plan presented by President Benz, granting the President the ability to make necessary tweaks. Is there any changes to that, or any conversation, any discussion? All right. I'd now like to turn that over to Susan O'Connor for the Audit and Operations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Audit and Operations Committee met on May 23rd, and we had 8 action items. The first action item recommended acceptance of the external audit report for the Florida Institute of Human and Machine Cognition for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2013. Ms. Betsy Bowers explained the Florida Institute for Human and Machine Cognition audit had been completed and the report contained no findings. Action item number 2, recommended acceptance of the 2012-13 Bright Futures Program audit by the Auditor General, presented also by Betsy Bowers. This audit included an examination of Bright Future Scholarships Program administered by the university and was included in the Auditor General's statewide audit of the program administered by the state of Florida. There was one finding for UWF. Bright Future funds related to student drops and withdrawals must be returned to the Florida Department of Education within 30 days after the end of the semester. After the end of the fall 2012 semester, UWF returned the monies 10 days late. This was attributed to the winter break and the onset of spring 2013 semester. And UWF has implemented 3 key procedures to ensure timely return of the Bright Future monies in the future. Action item number 3, acceptance of the State of Florida compliance and internal controls over financial reporting and federal awards for fiscal year 2012 and 13. Audit reports and the annual federal funds audit by the Auditor General. This was also presented by Betsy. On March 31st, 2014, the State of Florida Auditor General released its report on the statewide audit of the federal funds for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2013, which includes the University of West Florida. And the University of West Florida had 2 findings in this audit report. The UWF has plans in place to address these issues in our new Banner financial aid system. Estimated correction activity date will be September 2014. Action item 4, acceptance of UWF internal audit and management consulting. Internal auditing reports issued was presented by Betsy Bowers, and the internal auditing and management consulting completed 2 audits during the time period of April 2014. One on material and supplies fees and equipment fees, chemistry department, and the second on material and supplies fees and equipment fees for the art department. The material and supplies fees and equipment fees for the chemistry department, the audit report included 7 findings, which are separated between the chemistry department and academic affairs administration division. UWF management has actions in place to remedy each situation no later than September 30th, 2014. For the art department, the audit field work began on January 27th, 2014, and ended on March 17th, 2014. And the audit report was issued on April the 17th, 2014. The audit identified 2 findings, and by the end of May 2014, UWF management will have addressed all the weaknesses identified in this report. Action item number 5, acceptance of internal audit P-card auditing reports for the 3rd quarter with the fiscal year 2013-14, presented by Betsy Bowers. For P-card audit reports issued during the 3rd quarter, and that's January through March of 2014, management will implement corrective actions to be completed in fiscal year 2013 through 14. Internal auditing will follow up to determine if adequate corrective actions have occurred. Action item number 6 would approval of the 2014-15 through 2015-16 work plan for UWF internal auditing and management consulting, presented by Betsy Bowers. Key items were included in the proposed work plan for UWF internal auditing and management consulting for the fiscal year 2014-15. This work plan is a living document. It may be revisited at any point during the fiscal year and modified accordingly. It schedules 9 different audits: athletic eligibility process, conflict of interest, dependent eligibility, health benefits, enrollment affairs documentaries, departmental audit, grade integrity, IT general controls, banner student model, the vehicle management, vendor master files, the conduct various management advisory consulting fees, and will follow up of the federal, state, and internal auditing findings, and will continued participation in the risk and compliance console, re-acceleration work groups, and the evaluation of rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. Action item number 7, acceptance of UWF Business Enterprise, Inc. external audit, updated financial statements, audit of direct support organization, and this was presented by Colleen Asmus. The BEI audited financial statements were approved by the UWF Board of Trustees Audit and Operations Committee on November 13, 2013. However, since that date, final interpretation of the accounting pronouncement GSSB 60 occurred, resulting in the need to update the BEI financial statements, and BEI's external auditors audited the update financial statements and gave an unqualified opinion. Action item number 8 was the approval of UWF annual financial report for 2012-13, presented by Betsy Bowers. And so on March 24, 2014, the state Florida Auditors General released the report on the audit of the financial statements of the University of West Florida for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2013. The audit disclosed that the university's basic financial statement were presented fairly in material respects in accordance with prescribed financial reporting standards. The audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that we consider to be material weaknesses. The result of tests disclosed no instances of noncompliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We did have 2 informational items, and one was the annual internal control review. Ms. Betsy Bowers provided background information on the review and stated the recommendation is for UWF Board of Trustees and Audit and Operations Committee to perform an annual internal control review that would encompass overview and review of the internal controls and overview the view of fraud responsibilities. Another informational item is internal auditing updates on activities. Betsy Bowers and Matt Packard, compliance auditor, provided the committee with an overview of activities within internal auditing and the management consulting. And Mr. Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Susan. I'd now like to call on Mort O'Sullivan for the Finance and Facilities Committee report.
We had 5 action items. The first was a presentation made by Colleen Asmus, recommending adoption of UWF Regulation 5.019, Employee Debt Collection. by the Board of Trustees. Section 1010.03 of the Florida statutes requires universities to exert every effort to collect all delinquent accounts, and the statute permits university boards of trustees to adopt regulations in furtherance of those efforts. The statute permits universities to implement measures to assist with debt recovery, such as set-off procedures, payroll deductions, restrictions on the release of transcripts and the awarding of diplomas, and restriction on access to other resources and services of the university. This regulation provides notification to employees regarding the university's authority to collect debts and procedures that will be used. Our second item was presented by Ellen Till, recommending approval of the amendment of UWF Regulation 5.001, parking and registration, for the addition of remote lot parking permits. In June 2012, the Board of Trustees approved a 5-year series of gradual parking permit fee increases. As parking permit prices increase, the university desires to create a lower cost parking option for students and staff. The implementation of a remote lot parking permit option would allow students and staff to purchase a permit valid for remote lots at 1/2 of the lowest permit price. Shuttles will transport students and staff from the remote lots to other parts of the campus at regular intervals. If approved, this regulation will go in effect on July 1, 2014, and the remote lot SP2 permit will be available in the fall of 2014. Our third item was presented by Angela Jones, recommending approval of amendment of UWF Regulation 6.0054, competitive solicitation requirements. The proposed amendment updates the current regulation to incorporate amendments to the Board of Governors Regulations 18.001 and 18.002 regarding preferences for Florida-based vendors and bid protest procedures for contract procurement processes. Our fourth item was presented by Colleen Asmus, recommending approval of amendment of UWF Regulation 6.0055, procurement actions not subject to competitive solicitation process. The proposed amendment updates the current regulation to include authority provided in the Board of Governors Regulation 18.001, Section 6, subsection 12, allowing the university to utilize purchasing agreements made by other governmental entities and universities with similar competitive solicitation processes. This exception allows for the streamlining of certain procurement processes by reducing the administrative time and cost involved while maintaining fair and open competition in the procurement process. And our last action item was a presentation by Jim Barnett, Dr. Jim Barnett, recommending approval of the fiscal year 2015-2016 through 2019 fixed capital outlay plan. Recommended changes to the plan include priority number changes to proposed campus renovation projects, adding a Confucius Institute project, and a project title change. The fixed capital outlay plan will be submitted to the Chancellor's Office on August 1st, 2014. On all 5 items, our committee approved motions to recommend approval to this board that these items be approved today. We had one informational item, the fiscal year 2012-13 operating budget summary. Dr. Susan Stevenson provided a report at the end of the third quarter with budget to actual results for each fund group. This concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mort. Jay Patel, could you please give us the Student Affairs Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one action item. Recommended adoption of UWF Regulation 5.020, trespass and access to university property, presented by Dr. Jim Hurd. In the process of reviewing and updating university policies, it was determined that the university policy PS 01.01-03/01 enforcing trespass authorization required substantial revisions due to developing case laws. In particular, recent case law has made it clear that an opportunity for appeal of a trespass warning is important. Further, best practices suggested the need to establish definitions for key terms, clarification of public access to university property, and reaffirmation of the University Police Department's authority to communicate trespassing warnings on behalf of the university. It was also determined that this issue, because it does substantially impact external constituencies, be framed as a university regulation rather than a policy. We had 4 informational items. Number 1, case management, the year in review. Dr. LaSharon Wiley made a presentation to our committee showing the impact of case management services. Number 2, Office of Student Rights and Responsibility data for academic year 2013 and 14. Dr. Gentry McCrary provided an update on student conduct, academic misconduct, and related statistics. Number 3, Student Green Fees update. Dr. Jim Hurd gave an update on the 15 proposals submitted by the fiscal year 2015 funding considerations, the criteria used to refine the list of projects, the committee responsibilities, and the 4 green fee projects identified for funding in fiscal year 2015. Number 4, Title IX. Cindy Ferreira provided an update regarding the Title IX compliance at UWF. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to go back to the approval of committee meetings. We still have one that has not been approved, and that's Dr. Huff. So I'm going to stand in as a member of that committee so we can approve the minutes. So if you please present.
We, at our committee meeting May 23rd, we had 4 action items and 4 informational items. In action item 1, we recommended amendment to the UWF Regulation 3.001 admission standards for first-time and college student applicants. Action item number 2, amendment to UWF Regulation 3.017, release of student educational records, presented by Ann Zeiden. The amendments update the regulation's current definition of student educational records to comport with federal law by deleting applicant records from the definition. Update the directory information opt-out provision as an all or none designation to conform with current university technology, and provide a fuller description of how and when university employees may access and disclose student data in the course of performing administrative responsibilities. Action item 3, amendment to UWF Regulation 3.030, academic misconduct policy, presented by Dr. Gentry McCrary. The proposed changes are being made to accommodate for academic reorganization and to address a loophole in the current policy. The proposal amendments also make students who are currently under investigation for a different instance of academic misconduct ineligible for informal resolution of the current academic misconduct charge. Such allegations shall be handled through the formal resolution process. Granting of tenure was presented by Provost Martha Saunders. 7 individuals were nominated for tenure, having fulfilled all necessary requirements. From the College of Arts and Sciences, Jane Caffrey, Jason Ortegan, and Lisa Van Wermer. From the College of Business, Kevin Krieger. From the College of Professional Studies, Nancy Hastings, Susie Jans Thomas, and Lakshmi Prayaga. We had 4 informational items: the awarding of the Presidential Medal of Honor to Mrs. Ann Ballou, the UWF Diversity Plan, item number 2, 2014 to 2017. Dr. Kim LaDuff shared the Diversity Council's plan, which was released in April 2014, and the goals of the plan with the Academic Affairs Committee. There will be an annual report generated to report progress. Information item 3, Division of Academic Affairs update. Provost Martha Saunders provided a brief update on college reorganization, SACS reaffirmation, and the college dean searches. And item number 4, recognition of the Florida Public Archaeology Network as a UWF institute and center. This concludes my report, and move the minutes first as approval.
So moved.
I'll second. I think we have to do it that way if it's just the 2 of us. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. And this concludes the Academic Affairs Committee report.
Right.
And so for
No, that was the
clarification,
minutes.
that was a short meeting of the Academic Affairs Committee, which was convened with Chair Bear standing in. And pursuant to that action, those minutes were approved. And concurrently therewith, the committee report was given. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you, Dr. Burns, like to present our next
I do. I would be more than pleased. I would like to ask Susan Feathers, please, to come up to the podium. I'll join you in a minute, but I want everybody to see you. One of the things, as you all know, that has been important to us as an institution is the coalition of presidents of colleges and universities in Northwest Florida. And one of the things that we do together as presidents is to find mutually beneficial projects, grants, endeavors to do for institutions and, of course, for our students. And we met last month, and the first thing out of the barrel, all the presidents, there are 6 of us, the other 5, blasted me when I first came in and said, "You are going to do this." I said, "Okay, what is it?" And the thing is they want to recognize Susan Feathers. Susan works in our grants and research unit, and she has been handling all of the millions of dollars that she has helped us as a coalition get and distribute and do the paperwork and have it audited and have it be approved. She's gotten collaborative training grants for us, 2 regional National Science Foundation workshops. And one of the things that is also important about Susan is she has freely shared information that she has gathered from grant opportunities, from funding opportunities such as the Deepwater Horizon oil spill funding opportunities, and it has meant a great deal to the other presidents as well as me and us, of course. And I want to present this to you.
Wow.
And it comes from all 6 presidents. Pensacola State University,
Wow.
Chipola College. Over here. Okay. You have to do this. And I've been asking around, what is it that you did so well, that they like so much? One of the things is you do your paperwork. The second, because they distributed the money. All the money would come in, it would come into UWF, and then we would, Susan, would distribute it to the other institutions as they did their work and were reimbursed. And it was always on the spot. The next thing, Susan, is how much you shared information. You found out things, you told everybody about them, you get the principal investigators and the presidents and their grants people involved, and they just are so happy with what you did, and they want you to be thanked from all 6 of us. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
I just want to briefly say that anything that I accomplished was a team effort with my colleagues, Carol Rafalski, Teresa Bird, and my replacement, Christine Bodiford, is going to be wonderful. And I just feel honored to have been able to help Judy advance the cause here, and to work with Richard Podemsky has just been a wonderful experience. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Before we move further on the agenda, I'd like to take a 10-minute break.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. Please take your seat.
This time I'd like to move on with the agenda, and it is public comment time. At this time, those wishing to speak should have filled out the request form located in the back of the room and returned to our Board of Trustee recording secretary, Becky Lunsford. As a reminder, each person will have 3 minutes to address this board. We'll use a timer, and we ask that you keep your comments within the allotted time. Also, if you have any type of handouts or materials, please provide those to our Board of Trustees Secretary, Becky Lunsford. When you come to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Becky, do we have any speakers?
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move to the consent agenda for approval. There are 20 items on our consent agenda today. All were fully discussed during the committee meetings, and all of the recommendations of the committees reflect the proposed action provided with the agenda backup. Does anyone wish to pull any item from the consent agenda for further discussion? I'd like to pull item O, Board of Governors metrics, UWF 2014-15 improvement plan from the agenda. This item was fully discussed at the executive committee. However, since that time it was modified based on a suggestion from the chancellor to only focus on 3 metrics. The original document presented to the executive committee included 10 metrics. We delegated authority to the president to make necessary changes. The modified version was emailed to you on Monday and has been provided to you today. We'll take up this item as a separate item following the consent agenda. So we have the 19 items on the consent agenda. Is there any comment or any other item that you'd like to remove? Hearing none, then could I have a motion for approval?
Second.
Have a second? Do I have a second? Susan?
Second.
Do I have a second? Any just further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
And to clarify, that motion for approval includes the adoption of the recommendations of the various committees that were made during their meetings with respect to the matters set forth in the consent agenda, which has been provided to you.
All right. Before we move on, let's go back to the 2014 Board of Governors metrics. And you've got a copy before you. Does anyone have any questions regarding changes? Could I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I hope it's appropriate. I just got an email message from Jan Ignash reminding us at the board office, the BOG office, that they are hoping that we will still be under discussion and that there may be some refinement of these items. So there will still be an opportunity for refinement, I hope, after you vote.
Can we amend the motion to that effect?
So it will be an approval with such adjustments and modifications as may be required in the university's further discussions with the Board of Governors.
I thought that's exactly what Suzanne said.
Yes.
And we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Now time for information items, and I'd like to call on Provost Martha Saunders for academic affairs update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's my great privilege to talk with the board about my favorite subject, and that is academic affairs at UWF. I always like to remind people about our industry. You all come from various industries. Ours is knowledge. We create knowledge in our labs, and we help expand knowledge through our research. We disseminate knowledge in our classrooms, and we share it through our service to our community. We spend a lot of time this year in academic affairs, first slide please, talking about three things: quality, visibility, and community. And we see these as critical to our success. First of all, with quality, that's how we win. If we're not the best at what we do, we can be clever, we can be sexy, we can be lots of things, but we won't be a good university. So we spend a great deal of time in discussions about a quality education for our students. Visibility is important because, frankly, if nobody knows about us, it really doesn't matter how good we are. And so we spend a great deal of time this year talking about how we can share with broader markets and broader audiences the quality of UWF. And then community, we are inextricably tied to our local community, our professional communities, and we see these as mutually beneficial relationships. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're focusing since last I reported to you in March, and give you a few highlights of some changes. Next slide, please. One is the quality of the students that we get, people who come here. And I have a report from Joffrey Gaiman, just giving you a brief update. If you will look, the blue bars are numbers of first-time in college students, and you'll see the trends over the past few years. The last one these are students that are confirmed for 14-15. They have not all registered, so that final bar is not actually final. You'll also see a slight uptick over the last 3 years in the green bar, and that is test scores. And we're glad to see that increasing, but one of the things that we know and we've learned through our research on student retention, and we call that persistence, is that test scores are very poor predictors of whether a student is going to stay and graduate. A much better predictor is how well they did in high school. The courses that they took in high school and how well they did in those courses. And I'm very pleased, if you'll look at the line, shows our uptick in high school GPAs of our students who are coming. So I think as a quality measure, this is something we should be very pleased with, because students who are good students are in increasing numbers choosing to come here. Next slide, please. The President mentioned our Innovation Institute. I just wanted to highlight some of the projects that they're working on. This is under the capable leadership of Pam Northrup and her able team. We put together the Innovation Institute when I came on board because, well, really, academic affairs needed a flying squad. Our opportunities were coming at us at a lot of different directions. They involved a great deal of interdisciplinary work, and we just weren't set up to organize ourselves that way. And so I said we really needed a unit working out of the provost office who could take these opportunities for educational partnerships and say, okay, and work with the deans and say, okay, I need 3 of you and 4 of you and 5 of you, and we're going to come together and we're going to do this project. So, and this has been one of those things that has gotten bigger faster than any of us ever imagined. We have an online innovation hub. We're working in STEM immersive educational experience. We have the cybersecurity program, Complete Florida, and now the Florida Virtual Campus, which is huge. And a lot of us or a lot of others are working on making that a reality for us. We're looking now at about $22.8 million in recurring funds working out of this unit. So careful what you ask for, because it can really happen for you. But I'm very pleased about that, and we're still sort of inventing this as we go along. Next slide, please. Another quality measure are our professional accreditations. These are accreditations that some of our units are eligible for. They are rigorous. They ensure our students that they're getting state-of-the-art education. And our most recent accreditation decisions, positive decisions, have been in nursing, Commission on Collegiate Nursing Education, College of Business, most recently sailed through its AACSB International, and electrical and computer engineering through ABET. These are very rigorous processes, and if you get through that, you know you've got a good program. Next slide, please. The big gorilla, and the President mentioned that, is our SAC COC compliance report. This is a 10-year reaffirmation. SAC COC accredits every institution of higher learning in the Southeast and the Caribbean and South America. Private schools, for-profit schools, dental hygiene schools, state universities. And so it is a major accreditation. This is our big one that takes a long time to put together. And our compliance report under the leadership of Dottie Minear is due September 10th. You'll notice Dottie's not here. That's because she's working on the compliance report. And she sent me a note this morning and she said, I can work on the CCR or I can come to the meeting. And so you know my answer. This report, which is a very large self-report, goes to an off-site peer review committee. The SAC COC people distribute it to this committee, and they review all the parts of it, and then that will happen in November of this year. Then in the off-site committee will identify or may identify some areas of concern that they want to take a closer look at. And so an on-site committee comes to see us in March, and they pick up the recommendations from the off-site committee. If we're lucky, the off-site committee has cleared us from a number of the compliance issues, and then they take a closer look at certain areas. There are some areas that the on-site committee is required to, because some of the federal mandates, they must actually see firsthand and review firsthand. And so their report is done and goes to the Board of Trustees of SAC COC, and they will vote on our reaffirmation in December of 15. So it is a long process, but we are seeing the end of this, and I'm very grateful for all the work that our campus has done towards that. Everybody's in this one. Next slide, please. Another quality metric for us, I shouldn't use that word, that's an ugly word, metric these days. A quality measure for us is how well our students feel about their experience here. And so what we've started doing is at graduation, we hand out these cards to all of our graduates. They're standing in line, they're graduating, they have no reason to butter us up. And this little card says, congratulations, graduate. Can you tell us what faculty or staff member has made the biggest difference in your college experience? And I have a stack this big, and they tell us. And I'm in the process of writing letters to these staff and faculty and saying, hey, I know you probably don't know what a difference you made, but your name was mentioned as that. And these are just examples of the kinds of things that our students are saying about our staff who help them and our faculty who help them. And I am taking note of the faculty and staff members whose names come up a lot, because I think that deserves a lot of recognition, and we'll make sure that they get it. Next slide, please. We continue, as the President said, to do research. We reach for external funding. The most recent one in Mike Huggins and Karen Molek in the Department of Chemistry won a $930,000 NIH grant for undergraduate student training. And we are very pleased. Mike Huggins has been serving as interim dean. He's doing this in his spare time. I think maybe I'm not working my deans hard enough, but because this is big and this is important. The groans back there are from the deans. Next slide, I wanted to underscore one thing the President mentioned, that our engineering team placed second in the NASA hybrid rocket competition. If you'll look at the slide, look who they beat. UF, Embry-Riddle, and UCF. So a lot of kudos go to our student teams. This is what we call a high-impact practice. The opportunity for our students to serve on these competition teams, go to national competitions, compete with the best, and come in as winners sets them apart when they get into the workplace. Next slide, please. Health Occupation Students of America, the same thing. They are going to nationals. They beat UF and everybody else in Florida. So I'm just saying. Next quality measure, we're also doing a lot of innovative things. Again, back to high impact practices. We know the importance of an internship for our students. And so our College of Business has developed a virtual internship with a very innovative group, JE Group in Atlanta. And so our students stay here, they're continuing their studies, and they're having virtual internships through Skype, through teleconferences, and other ways of getting the kinds of experiences they need. Visibility, next slide, please. We continue to promote the things that we know are great. I never hesitate to say our faculty are the best I have ever worked with. One in particular who's gotten some recent attention is Hedy Solanke-Rubart. She has been named a classical piano artist by Yamaha. This, if you go on the Yamaha website, you'll see a very short list of distinguished musicians that they consider good enough to name a Yamaha artist, and she is the most recent there. But not only is she a good pianist, she is also a great mentor. Her protege, James Matthews, got a great deal of attention recently. James is a musician. He's one of our music students. He has overcome a lot of hardship, including a period of homelessness in his life, to become a distinguished musician. He was invited to play in Carnegie Hall, which he did just a couple of months ago, and then he was invited to be on the Ellen Show. And that's when I started hearing from my friends. They said, hey, I saw this kid, it's at your university, and then he was given a scholarship by Ellen on that show. Well, that lifts us all in order to get that kind of visibility. We also know that we have, I guess our biggest market are our prospective students. That's what we spend the time trying to get in. And so, next slide, please. We have hired a new marketing firm to work with us on recruiting students. We did an RFP. I guess we had about 8 very dynamic marketing firms that bid on the project, and we selected Mind Power. They're out of Atlanta. They have worked a good bit with universities. They get universities. There are a lot of creative programs out there that they can sell lots of things. Universities aren't it. But they were here last week for an initial visit, and they are so excited about us and about what they can do. And so I'm very much looking forward to working with them as we continue to get more visibility and recruit new students. Next slide. Speaking of visibility, you already know what good work we do with our veterans. Recently, we have been named Best Online Program for Veterans by U.S. News and World Report, and then MilitaryTimes.com, Best for Vets Colleges 2014. Community matters to us, but one important community is our internal community. You think about it, we have quite a few employees here who work in this community. They go to church in this community, they shop at Publix in this community, and they're out and about. And it's important that we invest and develop our internal community. So one of the things we started this year was a lead class for staff. It's a leadership class. This is our graduation. Notice they're all in shades because their future is so bright. This was a year-long class that we had under the leadership of Dr. Athena Dupre, where they learned a lot more about the university. They learned how to lead from where they are, but also they have helped create opportunities and developed a project to benefit our students. And so we're very encouraged by that, and we're going to do it again next year with the next class. We also, next slide please, began a department chair development program. This year, it was required of new department chairs. Second-year department chairs were strongly encouraged to attend. And again, a year-long process where we worked with them on those matters that maybe they weren't all that prepared to handle when we named them chair. We have a tendency to kind of select among our own to be our department chairs, and then we throw them in the deep end and hope they do all right. And we think everything rides on our department chairs. They are the standard bearers of the curriculum and of quality, and I think we need to invest in them even more. So we began this year with the development program. Bruce Swain, who is a former chair, a longtime chair, facilitated that group, and we will continue that over the next year. Next slide, as far as community. Our College of Business faculty continue to solve real problems in our local businesses. You see here, Christy Abston and her students are working with 5 area businesses. Kelly Massey, 6 area businesses. Our Capstone MBA program has 6 projects in area businesses, and then the SBDC helping tremendously with post-flood recovery. That's as it should be. Last slide is the Performance Funding Improvement Plan. You've heard a great deal about that. Tomorrow I'll be outlining the short-term improvement plan for all boards, and unless you have specific questions about that, that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please.
On the SACS process that ends in December next year,
Yes.
what is the history in SACS of universities being able to maintain and stay in the approved status?
It is, some universities do lose their accreditation, but there is a process for remediation. So if for some reason in December the SACS Board of Trustees had identified an issue that we had not resolved, they would ask us for they would ask for a monitoring report, and they would either give us 6 months or a year of a monitoring report to fix it. If after that period of time we had not repaired the problem, then they could go to warning. The next stage is probation, and the stage after that, your next provost will tell you about, because I have a feeling the president wouldn't let me stay around.
Do they ever give you approval but say, here's 3 items you need to work on?
They can write kind of a gentle note, usually through the staff of the SACS COC staff, but it is always in one of the reports. And I'm glad you brought that up. When we have our off-site review committee, so we send in our self-report, off-site review looks at it, we get a chance between the time they give us their feedback and the on-site group comes to write a focused report. So many times the institution has addressed it before the on-site group even gets there. There are some things that sometimes just take time to fix. One is if there were an insufficient number of faculty. I can't just, snap my fingers and make that happen, so we might have to wait and get a follow-up report until we could add additional faculty. So some of those kinds of things do take time. The schools that are struggling the most these days with accreditation are smaller schools. Many of the independent schools are having a rough time because they rely so much on tuition, and it's hard to keep riding on students' tuition to pay all your bills, and they are really struggling with that. They have a tendency to discount tuition, and then after a while they get upside down, just like other industries.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Provost? Dave?
Martha, I was real pleased to see the chair development program. I think that's going to be an important program in a lot of areas, but one item that we've talked a lot in committees is about retention and the importance of academic advising towards retention and persistence, as you deemed it. Is there a training module in the chair development program, and that might be a recommendation?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. That is in the performance improvement plan, that we will be adding a module on advising for our chairs. We're also, as we move toward University College, we will have, I'm very close to naming a dean for that college, then we will have an advising czar that will be reporting to that dean. We have advising going on all over the university, and as we've looked better looked closer at how our advising is, how effective it is, we do a really good job of advising our freshmen, and I think the departments do a really good job of advising their students once they get them. Where we're weak is in the handoff, and part of that is because advising is happening all over the university, and we need to sort of bring in a collegial way, all the units that are doing advising, and so that will be the responsibility of the University College Dean very soon. I'm hoping maybe this afternoon.
Further questions? Thank you, Martha. I'd now like to call on Janice Gilley to give us our final legislative outcome report.
And perhaps the legislature couldn't be farther from academics and knowledge, but I will try and piggyback.
It's your industry.
It is my industry. I'm not sure I should take credit for that. First, I would just like to say that, any type of government relations or legislative work that we do is a team effort. I've asked Kelly Beth Horton, that is our lobbyist that works with us in Tallahassee. She's on the phone. She wasn't able to be here today, but we're very thankful that she could join us from Fort Walton Beach in that way. She is looking to come to our September board meeting, and each of you can meet her face to face. Part of our team obviously is President Bentz and Trustee Bear. They're very helpful, and when I call with a fire alarm, they're always there to respond, and they're also always there to help guide us and get us through the process, the many various processes that we go through. I would also like to thank our legislative delegation that we have in the region. As each of you are out and about and you run into them, please take the time to thank them profusely. As we've mentioned on numerous times, we do have a very small delegation, but they are very supportive of the University of West Florida and the impact that it has on their region. And so please continue to do that. I'll just first go over briefly some of the major issues that impacted the SUS in general, UWF's issues, and then also the budget issues. Tuition was one of the main issues that was dealt with this year in various ways. First of all, there was the bill that allows now for any veteran that resides in the state of Florida to attend any state institution within state fees. Then we had the undocumented student tuition issue, which passed, and that states that any student that has attended secondary school in Florida for 3 consecutive years and then immediately prior graduation attends a state institution can now attend within state fees. They have to enroll in that institution within 24 months after graduation. This bill, though, did stipulate in particular that in-state veterans or veterans that reside in the state of Florida would have registration preference over undocumented students that fall into that category. Last year, as you know, we all dealt with the tuition increase issue, and that was the consumer price, the tuition increase. If the governor vetoed the tuition increase, that it would go back to the consumer price index. The legislature did delete that from statute. So in the future, the only way that the universities will have the opportunity for a tuition increase, it will be if the legislature sets that tuition increase and then the governor does not veto it. If the legislature sets the tuition increase, the governor subsequently vetoes it, then the tuition goes back to the previous year's tuition. So there's not an automatic increase in the future. Previously, you as the Board of Trustees had the opportunity to partner with the legislature and provide a tuition differential. It was set at a 15% cap, and if the legislature set tuition at 5 or 6%, you could then reach up to the 15%. The Board of Governors would have subsequent approval over that, and then that's what the tuition increase would be. That was deleted from statute this year for institutions, with the exception of anyone that has reached the preeminent status. Currently, only the University of Florida and FSU are in the preeminent status. That percent of tuition increase that they potentially would have is 6%, but there are metrics in the statute that then allow them to there are benchmarks for them to reach the 6%. If you reach certain benchmark, it's 2, another benchmark, it's 4, the third benchmark, it's 6. So that's where we are in terms of tuition increase. There were and because of those changes that I just mentioned, that did make adjustments to the prepaid tuition program in Florida. And so previously they had to actuarially be sound to cover all potential tuition scenarios. And with the 15% potential increase, that made their actuarial very high. So now with these changes, they have had a reduction of approximately $50 million that will go back to families in Florida as a refund for the new adjustment to the prepaid tuition program. So some folks will be getting a check in the mail. I expect sometime between September and November, but they'll be getting a check in the mail this year as a refund on some of the tuition changes. One of the positive things that I think that happened from a tuition perspective was in regard to National Merit Scholarship. The legislature did recognize that we, on occasion, do lose some of the best and brightest out of the state of Florida, particularly when it comes to National Merit Scholars. And so they have now set up a program in which a student in the state of Florida that reaches National Merit Scholar status can attend any state institution completely free of charge. Tuition, fees, and other stipends will be provided to them. And so what they're trying to do is currently Alabama and Texas are above us in the number of National Merit Scholars that attend institutions in their states. And so their goal is to get Florida to be at that number one position. From a policy perspective, there was a moratorium that was set on state colleges being allowed to promote more 4-year degrees. So it's from now until May of next year. So that means there's a 1-year hold. That does not mean that state colleges cannot be developing 4-year degrees to then present to the Board of Education next year. It just means that for the next year, we are not necessarily in competition with them creating those and implementing those programs in the fall. So the legislature is very keen on looking at duplication of effort, particularly in areas like in our area where we have a state college and a university in the same town, and making sure that there is a little bit more of a process in terms of the way academic programs are reviewed prior to approval for a 4-year degree at a state college. There were issues related to the direct support organizations in terms of them being able to have conversations. As the economy is coming back around a little bit, there are opportunities for institutions to partner with companies, and sometimes those companies have proprietary information that they might like to share an idea with an institution, but not necessarily have that knowledge be out there on the marketplace with public records as we all have to operate. And so there was an opportunity for these direct support organizations to have those conversations, and then at the point at which the university and the company then do have a agreement, then those documents are public at that point. But they were trying to protect some of the intellectual property during those conversations. One of the other good things that happened is that, we've been struggling with how to finance our public education capital outlay over the next several years, as we've seen a diminishment in the income and the sources of funds for those programs. And the Department of Agriculture Secretary Adam Putnam, he came up with a proposal in which we would transfer the sales of the commercial gross receipts tax to the facilities. And so that was successful. It was diminished from what his original percentage of like 3% going into transfer from general fund into PICO down to about 0.05%, but it's still a start. And so we're very thankful, because I think everyone has realized the extent to which our facilities have got to continue to be renovated and kept fresh and new for our students as new generations come in. Let's see, from the UWF legislative perspective, our policies, they're on the board here, but our number one policy our number one legislative proposal this year was to maintain the funding that we received last year, the new funding that the university received. We received funding for DMP, DPT, IT performance, and the Small Business Development Center, and also the Complete Florida program. It was a total of about $11.75 million. And the reason why that's such a monumental task is that once the legislature has a program, they like to see how you're performing in that program before they make it a continuous recurring funding. So we were very fortunate to have the support of our delegation and leadership to maintain that funding in our budget this year. Our new initiatives were the ones that are on the screen, and they were related to economic development and research at the institution. They are program specific, most of them. For example, the STEM, which was specifically to enhance mechanical engineering and physician's assistants. We're looking for programs that obviously relate to the region and help our students when they graduate tie to a workforce, a professional initiative once they leave. The other one, the next program, we received $5 million to work on economic development initiatives to continue to find ways to diversify the economy in our region, so that tourism and the military are not the main sources of income for our region in particular. The $1.6 million for the STEM pipeline will be very helpful from the manufacturing perspective and helping to get our students and the region professionally trained for the manufacturing opportunities that will probably be coming this way. The Haas Center received funding for a study, and those are recurring dollars for them to help. This first year, the study is specifically on the start date of the school year to determine the positives and the negatives related to that for students across the state of Florida. The next one, under Degrees, Research, and Facilities, we were pursuing flexibility and options for public-private partnerships. That bill became what we called a bill that gets loved to death, and so there were so many modifications and changes made to it that it got a little bit heavy under the weight of all the loving that it got, and so it died a very slow death about the last 3 weeks of session. On the next initiative, that was the remodeling of Building 58, the laboratory sciences facility. We got very good support, even from the Board of Governors, from the legislature, and the governor's office. We put together some really yucky pictures of what the facility looks like so they could really understand. We've threatened to take them there every time they've come to town, but we always shy away from it. Sorry, Dean Huggins. But we do shy away from it. And then the last one was the Complete Florida. As the provost has mentioned to you, Complete Florida is a very strong initiative that we have currently going on, and it's for the the adult learner population in the state. We're currently managing, I know Dr. Northrup could give you lots of facts about this. There's 11 different institutions around the state are partnering with us. Obviously, more want to. We're very thankful. We went in asking for to maintain our $2 million in funding and to receive another $2 million in non-recurring. We came out of session with $3 million in recurring funding and $3 million of non-recurring money, and so that was a big. A very big boost to the program. And so there are several initiatives related to it that will respond to what the legislature is looking for us to do for adult learners and those that we want to help complete across the state. And then finally, the Florida Virtual Campus is also coming along with this. As the provost said, be careful what you ask for. We started a conversation 3 years with one of the chairmen about some transformational initiatives that we thought we could help with from a student services perspective. And that turned in from, well, y'all think y'all can handle this, to how about you handle the whole enchilada? And so we're struggling through that. Struggling, I think, is the right word. And then lastly, but certainly not leastly, the thing that we had to start dealing with was the performance-based funding. As many of you are aware, performance-based funding, I'm going to use the word punitive. It was originally designed a bit to be punitive to the 3 schools that scored at a certain level or below a certain level with the Board of Governors. And I would say one of the greatest feats that our team had this legislative session was finding a way to compromise so that the University of West Florida did not lose $3.8 million, but has an opportunity to present an improvement plan to the Board of Governors to receive and recoup that $3.8 million. And I have to tell you, of all the things that we did accomplish this year, that to me is one of the biggest things that we accomplished, because that is a recurring cut to our base, and it can be compounded annually if we are not careful. And so having the opportunity for that improvement plan was something that happened in the last 72 hours, and it was definitely a nail biter as to whether or not we were really going to get that opportunity to have that. And so we could be standing here saying that we were not able to do that. And so I'm very thankful that we were as a team. And so that concludes my report. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Janice, could you just share a little bit about the Complete Florida? I think we heard about it about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago. Am I correct in thinking that that's the program in which we're reaching out to those students who are maybe lacking 10 hours credit or 15 hours credit, have gone through so much to try to get that degree but can't get across the last 5 yards, so to speak, and trying to find them and do what we can to get them back into an institution to complete their degree?
Yes, okay. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And one of the key elements of this, too, is what they're calling concierge student services, because if a student has previously dropped out, they obviously, they've already had issues that have caused them to drop out once. And so having those concierge services to help those students to get them across that line is a very key component of this. And it's expensive. It is expensive to tailor-make those services for those students to make sure. But we've had wonderful support from the faculty in trying to help make sure that all the programs are available 100% online for these students. And that's one of the other things that key, because it fits into their life from a flexibility standpoint. Anything else?
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you very much, Janice. And Kelly, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Chair, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the team. And like Janice said, it was a team effort, and we had 2 really great resources in President Bent and Chairman Baer. I mean, every time we called them, like Janice said, they were there. And without their key relationships, we would not have had such a great session. And we really did have a fantastic session. And the performance pay, the way it turned out, was really a blessing. It was very scary there for a while, but thanks to especially Senator Gates, we had a very good seat at that table, and I think that we were able to accomplish what we needed to. So I think it was a wonderful team effort, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the team. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is resolution on faculty and staff compensation. I'd like to call on Dr. Huff and Dr. John Platt to make that presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. As we present this morning, for those so inclined, I'd ask that any faculty and staff here in the room stand up. Good morning, fellow trustees. I'm here today in my role as President of the Faculty Senate to provide comments about the resolution on faculty and staff compensation. I've invited Dr. John Platt, Vice President of the Faculty Senate, to join me here this morning. So if there's any questions from trustees, he can identify any resource person in attendance to thoroughly respond to the questions you might have. You've all had the opportunity to review the resolution. I want to make some simple points and comments. In 2012, the Faculty Senate issued a resolution addressing salary compression and identifying compression as a serious issue that faced all of us at the University of West Florida. The resolution before you now was created and adopted as a resolution of the Faculty Senate. This resolution has been endorsed by the College of Business Council, the College of Arts and Sciences Council, the College of Professional Studies Council, the Staff Senate, the Library Faculty Council, and the Chairs and Directors Group. Faculty and staff members are a diverse group. Some are more or less vocal on various issues. This is true in virtually all organizations, but on this issue we all agree. Faculty and staff at our university, the University of West Florida, are underpaid. President Bentz has stated in her response to the resolution that faculty and staff deserve cost of living increases and a competitive annual wage. Dr. Bentz has noted that without the faculty, staff, and students, there would be no UWF. From a purely business orientation, the board and the faculty and staff want the university to succeed at its core mission. That mission is teaching students, adults who move forward with their choices to contribute to our community and society. If you expect good, let alone great work from people in the organization, and you do not recognize that work with appropriate pay, you demoralize that workforce. And here at UWF, we are all united in producing quality products and quality results. We see our products in very immediate and personal ways. If the Board of Trustees wants the university to succeed, then the quality of instruction and support is most important, and salary must be a serious priority. I appreciate following Provost Saunders with her report of what we're all doing together. Externally identified metrics, which of course we know is the big topic, or a big topic, those don't equal quality, though metrics are beneficial for a number of reasons. We understand the latest of legislative funding models, and while relevant, this newest legislative funding model and the vagaries of political action do not replace our ability and our responsibility to show what the University of Florida's priorities are through action. UWF's 2012-2017 strategic plan was a work of great thought and effort by so many people in our campus community and beyond. Within that document that is intended to guide our decisions and actions were priorities that included recruiting, supporting, retaining, and recognizing faculty and staff. Dr. Bentz notes that the strategic plan calls for an investment in our valued faculty and staff. Our upcoming SACS reaffirmation and the growth and success of our programs require new faculty members and obviously talented staff to complement the faculty efforts. The requirement for new faculty and staff is not a surrogate for addressing the salary issue of the existing dedicated members of the UWF family. People are our most valuable asset. In the last few days, a national story spoke about the rise in college education costs. The report noted that costs of college have gone up, but these rising costs are very little related to faculty, as faculty salaries have been stagnant. There's any number of solid and exemplary faculty and staff members who we could praise at every one of these meetings, and just like in any other organization, most are quietly doing their job, teaching and inspiring and preparing other adults to see, conceive, and approach issues and challenges in more productive and innovative ways. We've long said here at the University of West Florida that buildings have numbers and people have names. The graduate cards that the provost referred to is a good example of how we're reminded of that. We have great professionals serving the mission of the university, and they deserve a stable, well-thought-out salary plan. Please carefully consider the information and issues raised and discussed in the resolution. Dr. Platt?
Just a few comments. The health of the university is dependent upon getting viable faculty and having students want to come to our university. Unless we're able to compete and get the best faculty possible, we're going to significantly see a decrease in the number of quality students, and thus that's going to have an impact upon our region. Our university is the region is dependent upon our university. We are very eager to provide the best possible service that we can. And in doing so, we will not only be able to help our students who come to us, but we'll also be able to help our region. One of the things that Richard mentioned, President Bentz, and how she has been stating the importance of salary. One of the things that the President does is compare us most closely to the University of North Florida. And I think that's a very instructive point at this juncture. In 2012, the University of North Florida salary compensation for faculty went up 4.2%. At the same time, ours went down 0.3%. We can't continue to be successful in competing throughout the state if we're going to do that. What I'd like to do is open it up to questions from the trustees and call upon different faculty who have been involved in the development of this plan. Most importantly, Dr. Doug Waggle and Dr. Dan Pace. Any questions? Appears not.
Did you have some other people you said you wanted to ask to?
No, sir. We're just interested in responding to your questions in the most appropriate fashion and the most informative.
I hear no questions.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Platt, Dr. Huff.
Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to make a few comments. Number one, I take the fact that competitive salaries are very important, and I want UWF to be competitive. What has happened is that the recession has changed many things about how salaries for all state employees have been treated by the legislature. For 30 years, the legislature gave us cost of living raises every few years, often every year, and gave us salary raises every year or every few years. And the recession stopped that. They have given a few very small raises, but nothing like what they were able to do before. What has really happened is that there's been a shift from state providing the raises to the universities providing the raises. And we have only been able to afford some small raises and a bonus or two, but it is what we could afford. The old models that we all, as faculty members, grew up with and matured with are gone. The new normal is different. The only path that I see that is clear to have money to be able to give to faculty and staff for raises is through performance-based funding and the metrics. I hate to say that, but it is true. We have got to get over 26 points. We have got to get out of the bottom. We've got to get in the money. And when we do that, I know who will have gotten us there, and it is the faculty and the staff. And I am committed to rewarding faculty and staff for their hard work. We have to bargain the details once we reach that point. No one wants to give money to faculty and staff more than I do. We are in a terrible gap between state funding for raises and cost of living being cut off or severely restricted from the legislature and the state to falling on the shoulders of one of the universities, and we happen to have one of the smallest bases, one of the smallest enrollments other than New College in the state, and it shows. So I know we can get out of this. I know we can get in the money, and when we do, I am committed to rewarding them, Mr. Chair, and I mean that. But I understand their points, and I appreciate them.
Thank you. I think you find within this board that we as operators of our own businesses recognize the significance that our employees and our customers make. Without them, we have no business. So we do appreciate your comments and take them under advisement. I'd now like to change the order of our agenda, if I could, for a special resolution in recognition of service. I'd like to ask that Christopher Hill come forward. Chris represented Student Government Association and has given up that post as of April, and at this time we'd like to recognize Chris for service to the university. There you are.
Thank you so much.
In recognition of profound appreciation of distinguished service, Trustee Christopher Hill, whereas the Honorable Christopher Hill has loyally served as a member of the University of West Florida Board of Trustees since April of 2013, and whereas Trustee Hill is President of the Student Government Association, whose term expired in April 2014, served on the Student Affairs Committee, using his position on the UWF Board of Trustees to encourage discussion and enhance the higher education environment for students, faculty, and UWF staff. And whereas Trustee Hill, being an outstanding College of Business MBA graduate, student leader, and ambassador of UWF by serving on the Florida Association of Student Government Associations, now therefore be it resolved that the University of West Florida Board of Trustees, at its regular meeting on the 12th day of June, the year of 2014, does hereby recognize and commend Christopher Hill for his many contributions to the University of West Florida. And be it further resolved that this resolution is included in the minutes of the meeting and a copy presented to Mr. Hill as a token of the board's appreciation and sincere thanks. Could I have a motion for approval? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passed.
There you go.
We had to do that so we can get Chris through this year. Out of here. I'd now like to call on President Benz for our budget proposal.
I'm going to come around to the podium, I think. Well, it's budget time again. And next slide. I have 5 topics I want to briefly go over with you. First, an overview of the year that is ending, the SPARA process, the investments we made for 14-15, our legislative investments, and the proposed 14-15 budget. So let's move to the next slide with the current budget overview, the year that is ending. All of our funds, excluding financial aid, which is basically a pass-through, it was $176 million. You can see that education in general, that's the money we get from the legislature in the state of Florida, was $114 or 65%, and the rest of the funds the next biggest was contracts and grants at 17%. People like Susan Feathers, Carol Rafalski, and others get that money into us. There are auxiliaries, it is at 11%, and those are the monies we collect for things like summer camps, bookstore commissions, and so on. Next slide. Of that pie, the 65% that comes from the state and that is recurring is broken out this way. The current year, the E&G funding is $114 million. As you can see, 55% of that comes from general revenue, and the remainder really comes from tuition. A small percent, 1%, comes from interest earnings. We put it in the bank, and it earns money. So this shows you how things stand for the fiscal year that ends the end of this month. And so let's, let's shift gears, and let's go to the fiscal year coming up, starting good old July 1. Let me remind you that each year our Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Stevenson, makes up a budget, and that budget is conservative. And we also, because it is conservative, we often have money that is that we take in that is over and above what we had budgeted, and that's always a good thing. On the other hand, these are very limited dollars in comparison to the $176 million that when you look at all of our funds. And they come from enrollment growth, the recurring performance funding we got from last year, and enhancement funds from the legislature. The funds really only amount to 2.7% of our total budget. Next year, we have $5.1 million to be able to disperse, some of which is non-recurring. As you know, we worked hard to develop the SPARA process, Strategic Planning and Resource Alignment. And what that means is when we allocate this money, the strategic plan and its priorities drive what we are spending it on. We also have another driver, is metrics. So there are 2 focuses or two things that our investments are pointed towards. 1 is our strategic plan, 2 is moving our metrics. Now, last year, we sort of had a bottom-up process, and we asked each unit and each division to identify what they would like to spend their money on and justify it. The vice presidents vetted it, and then they presented their top 3 or 4 to me, and we talked about each one of them and made our decisions. Unfortunately, that left $10 million on the table, of proposals on the table from last year, and we. So what we did is we asked, we want to know what to do this year. Do you want to go through the full SPARA process, knowing that we have much less funds this year to distribute, or do you want to just look at the unfunded proposals from last year and choose from them? Well, of course, the result was 50-50. Half the people said, let's have a new process. Half the folks said, let's use the unfunded proposals. And I decided to do the unfunded proposals this year. And so that's what we did. So in the next slide, I reviewed the needs, the vice presidents and I reviewed the needs and obligations. The vice presidents recommended things. I reviewed them and approved them. We're presenting them to the Board of Trustees. and the results will be posted on the SPAR website. So that's our investment process for this year. Next. So let's talk about our investments. We assessed the needs based on the list, and this is what we did with them. Of the $5.1 million available, it's broken down this way. We had $2 million from our operational enhancement. These are recurring. We had 1.9 additional recurring funds from growth in student enrollment, performance-based funding, and consumer price index increase in graduate tuition. And then we had some non-recurring funds, which is bridge funding from our reserves, which I will explain in the next slide. So the $2 million that we got from the legislature this year for operations can be considered recurring. That's how they gave it to us, but can also be considered non-recurring because they could take it away next year. I don't think they will, but it is not a slam dunk, and I will not put any people on that money because it could get in trouble. We'll protect it next year. However, what we have done, and I haven't talked about this too much, is that back in 2009 and 10, in the really, really worst part of the recession, we were asked mid-year to take a 7% additional cut, millions of dollars. We protected our academic core during these cuts as much as we possibly could. Other divisions took 10%, 12%, 15% cuts, and the academic affairs division took less of a cut. Everyone knew that. We outsourced, we stopped, the staff non-academic staff were let go, but there were some cuts in academic affairs too, don't get me wrong. They contributed some, but we tried to keep their contribution less. But 7% was all we could find without hurting ourselves and shooting ourselves in the foot or eating the seed corn. So I didn't take 2% of that. So all along we have been fixing that hole in the budget and making our budget balanced by carry forward funds pledged from our strategic reserve. We have the money. Every year we've been paying that down. It was higher than what it is now. But right now it is what we're, each year of my presidency, we have been tied up our strategic reserves and fixing the hole in the budget. I think that it is best for us this year to take this $2 million and balance our budget. And so this is what I propose. It restores flexibility to us with our strategic reserve. It is no longer tied up as collateral to produce the necessary carry forward that fixes the hole in the budget. And the President's Opportunity Fund. Both of those were tied up because we needed the carry forward to balance the budget. And as long as we did that, we were fine. But I think that we also now have another need for this to be a safety net, which is our improvement plan. We have $3.8 million that is being held back from us this year. I do think that we will get it back. Our improvement plan has been discussed. The Board of Governors leadership is coming this afternoon. We will discuss it again. They will discuss it with you and with me and our leadership. But what if we don't? We have to use this as our safety net. That's what it was created for. We have that much money in carry forward in our strategic reserve and President's Opportunity funding. So we're going to fix the lien, and we're going to open it up to be another safety net for the improvement plan funding. So that's what I am recommending to you. Next. So this is what our budget for 14-15 looks like. We are going to, we've got, let's see, 38% is going towards our enhanced student access. These are our investments. This is the 5.1 million, down to 3.1 because I'm taking the 2 million and fixing the hole in the budget. So of the 3.1 million left for investment, this is how we are dividing it up in the largest categories. The SP is strategic plan, and those are our priorities on the right. And you can see that enhanced student access and the faculty distinguished teaching, scholarship, and research make up the bulk of that money. And then investments, and then 34% goes to institutional. So it is important that you understand how our decisions are made. Next slide, I'll break them down a little bit more for you. When it gets to strategic direction 1, which is enhanced student access, these are the kind of things that we are funding with our investment dollars. Student development through career services, hardware, and software, and economic data support. Access to UWF, the strategic integrated marketing that that the provost was telling you about, that's coming up out of our investments. The visitor center is being improved, our front door, if you will. Also promoting student persistence and progression to degree, our retention plan, which excuse me, has been presented to us, and also the Dean of Undergraduate Studies. So 1.1 of those $3.1 million are going to this. The next slide. 26% or $825,000 are going to our faculty. And students to engage students in high-impact learning opportunities, some of which the provost explained to you today, and the Academic Technology Center, University College. Also, to recruit and retain and support quality faculty, we have to pay for the promotion and the raises, that promotion faculty who got promotion and tenure, and that's coming out of an investment of this dollars. And also lower division instructional support. We need more of them. And so that's where 26% of our investment dollars are going. Next slide. 2% are going to a valued partnership, only $70,000. And you think, well, why are we, if community is important, why are we giving so little of our investment dollars? The answer is that money comes from outside the university through partnerships, that BEI, through organizations that partner with us, and through communities that UWF serves. And BEI and the UWF Foundation are the key outreach community groups that gather those dollars for us. Next slide. Then we have sustainable institutional excellence. Well, we have the banner student, which is a, what would you call it, Martha? It is a platform that has now, integrates all of our student data. You want to know how many majors you have? Boom, you'll know how. You want to know where a student is in their progress to a degree? Boom, you'll know how. You want to know how the financial aid on each student is doing? Boom, you'll know that. So it needs 800,000 more recurring dollars, and so we are on the home stretch with this, and we're contributing to that. Another big area was the institutional branding, which we need to do, and also a P-card auditor for part-time. Next slide. When you take a look at it by division, you can see that academic affairs of our investments is getting the most dollars, as it should, and BFF, Business, Finance, and Facilities, is getting 0, and Vice President Stevenson is very proud of that, the rest of the university divisions can benefit from the investment dollars. So that's how it looks like by division. Next slide. Also, by functional category, when you get to institutional support, and that includes the banner, and academic support, that includes the Quality Enhancement Plan, Academic Technology Center, and the Dean of General Studies. Institutional support, like I said, is primarily banner, and branding, which is non-recurring. Student support is enrollment management, marketing, retention, career services. Public service is the Carnegie Community Engagement Project that the Board of Governors wants us to do. Next slide. And here, Janice went over this. This is the breakdown of it. I just want to give you an idea of how, sort of in our level of understanding, not Janice Gilley's level, that of the over $50,000, $25 million, $50 million, 25 is recurring, and 25 about is non-recurring. The non-recurring goes towards facilities, goes towards non-recurring money that's one-time money. I also want to tell you that what we are not budgeting, see the bar there, just above the bottom, the Florida Virtual Campus and Career Education, that's a lot of money there. That's about $20 million. That is not in our budget yet. It is going to get in our budget mid-year. And so when you look at the figures for next year, it will not include that yet because it's not in our budget yet, but it's coming. You will only see about $13 million because that is what is recurring and is in our budget. Next slide. This is our new budget. Next slide. For 14-15, $127 million, which will grow by $20 million plus mid-year. Academic Affairs is getting, of course, the bulk of the money, and the other divisions get less. Student Affairs, and also in this is Central and Summer. They are individual units within our budget, and so the current increase is 12% before the other money comes in our budget. But I want you to know that it is with great pleasure and with great relief that our budget has been increased. But I also want to remind you that that new money has come in for new programs. New programs, that means earmarked, that means we can't spend it on other things, and we cannot spend it on, well, we just can't spend it on other things. Next slide. This is how, by function, how our budget will look next year with instruction, academic support, institutional support, and so on. And it is basically the same. We have an incremental budget, and it varies each year by certain increments, but at least this year the increment is on the upside. Next slide. This is the 5-year trend by division. There are 5 divisions, but we also include Central, which is the Strategic Reserves, and Opportunity Fund, and you can see that Academic Affairs has been growing. The President's Division has grown a lot, but that is because of the OEDE, Office of Economic Development and Community Engagement, and the Haas Center is also in our division, and that has caused an increase in what is the President Division's budget. But the others are relatively flat. Academic Affairs can't grow fast enough, and thank goodness it's growing by leaps and bounds. Next slide. This is looking at it again by function. You can see instruction, what we're paying for and spend our money on. Instruction is going up, as is academic support and public service. Public service also includes the Office of Economic Development, the Haas Center, WUWF, things like that have gotten those previous ones have gotten money. So that's what it looks like now. Next slide. This is our all funds for next year, $189 million. It's up, and that's great. E&G will be 67% of our budget next year, and all of the numbers are a little bit up. It is important that we know, you remember that this excludes financial aid. That's about $42 million that comes through the university to students, but it's also important to note the reason it's not in there is because students spend financial aid on other things outside of instruction. They pay rent with it, they buy books with it, and they pay transportation expenses. However, the portion that the students do pay in tuition and fees is reflected in the budgeted amounts of other funds. So in the other funds. So that, trustees, is our budget report. What we did with our money, what we hope to do with our money, the kind of investments that we are making with our money, And thank goodness we are strong in the legislature, and we're represented well, and I do firmly believe we will get every single penny of our funds that are being withheld back. Are there any questions?
Questions for Dr. Benham?
One suggestion.
Yes, sir.
Susan, could you prepare and distribute later to us this budget laid next to last year's budget? So we can see where the changes occurred?
You bet. I actually did it when I was making my presentation. I was looking at the front part of the presentation and then the last one.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Thank you, Dr. Benz.
You bet.
Our next presenter is Dr. Susan Stevenson to present the history and trends in tuition and fees paid by UWF students.
Good morning. Good morning. I typically refer to this tuition overview as an introduction to the General Horner presentation that comes up next. So in the past, we've had the ability to increase tuition. We've had the authority to raise it by CPI. We've had the authority to request differential. As Janice mentioned earlier in her presentation, both of those have gone away in the legislature. So this will just be kind of setting the stage to let you know where we are as an institution as opposed to leading up to a tuition action item. Next slide, please. On the national front, last year we increased tuition by the Consumer Price Index of 1.7%. As a result, Florida, on average for published tuition and fees by state, slipped from number 41 to number 44. Based on the amounts that those other states have been increasing, I suspect that with a 0% increase in tuition, we will slip again this year and be even cheaper compared to other states. Next slide, please. This is from the IPEDS data feedback report. The most recent data is through 2013. At this point in time, we're at about 85.6% tuition, charging tuition at about 85.6% compared to our peers and aspirants. In this category, we've actually increased, had a little bit of an uptick this year. Last year, that number was 66.5%. Next slide, please. This gives you a look at the state budget, the entire state budget. You'll see in the blue wedge, kind of in the upper right-hand corner, that education is $20 billion, about 27% of the state's budget. Drilling down in the next slide, of that $20 billion, $2 billion comes to the SUS, which is about 10% of the education budget, and of that, about 4.1% comes to UWF. You'll note the PBF line, performance-based funding line, that's where they are holding back the $200 million. Our 3.8 is in that line, and we, as the President said, we're going to earn that back with our improvement plan. Yes. Next slide, please. This shows the change in the funding mix. The fall-spring tuition anticipated collections are up a bit, while summer is down some. The GR and lottery and non-recurring funds are up primarily in non-recurring funds and earmarks. As the President mentioned, the $20 million for Florida Virtual Campus won't come till mid-year, so it's not in this graph either. And of course, it also, at this point, excludes the 3.8, which is in holdback for performance-based funding purposes. Next slide. So what does all that mean to our students? How's it impacting them, our tuition rates? The following slides are all about Florida undergraduate resident students. This first slide talks about how much we have in resources. 40% of our students are on Pell, and Pell is the largest category that we have in terms of dollars that we offer to students. Our numbers in Bright Futures are actually declining from fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2014. We went from having 3,401 Bright Futures students to 2,816. And the amount that came from Bright Futures for our students was reduced from $6.3 million to $5.2 million. That's largely due to the increasing standards for Bright Futures to be eligible for it. It's impacting our students, and we have fewer students, and we're collecting fewer dollars for Bright Futures. Next slide, please. This is our overall trends in grants and aid. You see, primarily, most of the funds are going up a little bit or holding steady. The one exception there is Bright Futures that I mentioned in the previous slide. This slide looks at, again, all Florida resident undergraduates. These are students who've received, all their aid is in, that I talked about in the previous slide, Pell, Bright Futures, scholarships, waivers, being paid by a third-party agency, that kind of thing. 39% of our students, after those grants and awards and scholarships are made, 39% of them receive money back over and above tuition and fees, tuition and mandatory fees. And of course, they can use that excess to, as the president mentioned, to pay for their rent, their books, all kinds of things. Next slide, please. If we look at just those 40% of our students who are the neediest students, so this is a subset, the 40% who receive Pell, of those students, 73% receive grants and aid in excess of their tuition and fees, and they get a check back to pay for those other things that they need to do. Only 2% owe in excess of $2,000 per term. Next slide. This is gives you an idea of the amount of funds that we have and the amount of need that we have. When we look at the unmet need after we apply Pell to our student accounts, it's about $3 million of unmet need. We actually collect in the financial aid fee and the 30% of our differential tuition that we apply toward need-based aid, $3.7 million. So we have the funds to assist these students, and Joffrey Gaiman and her crew are certainly applying those funds. In this slide, we're back to all Florida resident students, and we're looking at when you incorporate not just the aid, but also the other, subsidized loans and the Florida prepaid program. When you look at that for all students, 68% of our students get money back after tuition and fees. And only, I can't even read the percent on my slide, 9%, I'm sorry, owe more than the $2,000 per term. Next slide, please. About 20% owe $2,000 more per semester. This sort of shows you the trend in the mix. That has been growing over time, but it has held steady between last year and this year, pretty consistent with a relatively small change there. Next slide. This is with loans and prepaid. Same, again, over time, the number of students that with loans and prepaid have most of their needs met beyond tuition and, for tuition and fees has grown, but it has held steady for the last couple of years. That's concludes my overview of tuition and its impact to our students. Do you have any questions about?
Are there questions? Okay.
Susan, the Bright Futures numbers, are those down statewide, or are we losing share to other SUS?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question, but I suspect that they are down statewide. But I can get that answer for you.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that.
Sure.
Trustee Cleveland, my discussions with the other presidents is that, except at FSU and U of F, they're down at all the other state universities.
Trustee Cleveland, I just turned around and Joffrey gave me the, yeah, it's down.
Why is that?
They increased Joffrey can probably speak to this better than I can, actually, if you want a very detailed answer. They've increased the standards over the last few years and made it harder to get. Is that fair assessment? Okay.
Intentionally. During the recession, Bright Futures, there were so many students that qualified for Bright Futures that it was really eating into the general revenue. And so in order to be able to control that, they raised the standards and made it harder to keep Bright Futures. Right.
I have one question. Susan, if you could encapsulate your presentation for us into the best talking point you could come up with to say, what is the state of tuition today at UWF as it relates to doing the best we can possibly do to keep our students supported and to recruit more? What would it be?
I would say our provost, faculty, and the staff of this university do an incredible job on limited funds to deliver a high-quality product to our students. But we are definitely challenged in our tuition model.
Any further questions?
I have one. When we look at one of the charts that you had, and it showed how much that our students, our customer, got from Pell Grants and other grants and stuff, what is the average out-of-pocket then in reality to the student? Because we're talking now about keeping down our tuition, but if I'm already getting 60-some-odd% free, what is really on the burden of our student?
Well, those slides relate to tuition and mandatory fees. The financial aid office actually calculates based on, and I'm getting a little bit into Joffrey. Maybe Joffrey should come up here and help me answer these questions, but it's a hard question to answer because the out-of-pocket, most students, most parents think of out-of-pocket having to do with the whole picture. What's their transportation need? What are their books cost? What's the housing? As opposed to the portion that really goes to the educational endeavor, which is tuition and then some of the fees.
Well, we're challenged to keep down tuition, challenged to keep it down, and yet, if I'm not mistaken, over 60% is coming from other sources for the students.
Well, they get a check.
That 60% of our students, when we apply the aid to and we apply it to tuition and fees first, they get a check after that. So it's being paid for a considerable number of our students. It's being paid, well, it's certainly the 40%. Well, I'd have to go back and kind of mixing things up a little bit. But yes, a significant number of our students get that check back after grants and aids are applied.
Or pay nothing.
In other words, at that point, they're paying nothing out of their pocket. Now, whether they're paying something out of their pocket after that to pay for books or pay for housing, this is what portion of aid is taking care of their education.
Very interesting.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Stevenson. If you just stay there for a minute, we're going to move to our action item agenda. And the first item is Dr. Stevenson to review tuition regulation.
This is the General Horner all-in proposal, PowerPoint, so that you have an overview, and this will be quick this year because there's not a lot of changes, but if we can go to the next slide. As we discussed, there's no CPI and no differential increase, so there's no change in undergraduate tuition. Next slide. This is graduate tuition, which the authority to increase graduates' tuition does reside with the Board of Trustees, the local Board of Trustees. This represents a consumer price index increase of 1.5%, or $4.36 per credit hour. It's only to the base, so you'll see the same number on the differential programs that have a higher rate of tuition. There are a couple of different graduate programs. Next slide. Oh, and just as a side note, in terms of compared to the other SUS institutions, UWF charges, our rate for graduate tuition is, well, we're 11th out of 12 institutions that provide graduate programs.
That means we're
Cheap. We're inexpensive. Excuse me, we are not cheap. We are inexpensive. High quality, efficient, and inexpensive. You may recall that in accordance with Board of Governor Regulations 7.001, we proposed 4 programs for market rate tuition, for approval to charge market rate tuition. This board approved that in September. We went to the Board of Governors in November, and it was approved. At the time we brought that proposal forward, our summary indicated that we would charge up to $500 per credit hour, with the promise that we would come back to you and share with you what the actual rate, exact rate would be. It's here and it's been posted in our regulation. Currently, the 4th program, the Master's in Accountancy, is on hold, and so it is not in this tuition rate proposal. Next slide, please. This is that financial aid fee. There was no increase in base undergraduate tuition, so there's no increase in the financial aid fee. Those are linked together. It's 5% of undergraduate base tuition. By the same token, for when graduate tuition went up 1.5%, the financial aid fee for graduates also went up. This money is used primarily for scholarships, and is part of that aid that loops back around through the financial aid process. These are our mandatory fees. You'll see the only fees that we have recommended are the the triad fee. The total is 11 cents. The caps for the triad fee are 5% increase in any given year, and not to exceed a total of 40% of your base funding, of your base tuition. This gets us to that cap. The allocation between the health fee, the athletic fee, and the activity and service fee is determined by a committee that's made up of 50% students and 50% faculty and staff. They propose the allocation. This board has already approved that fee increase, and this is the allocation proposed to the president and brought forward in the tuition regulation. So, drum roll for the all-in slide, which is next. The total increase cost for an undergraduate for the academic year next year is $2.86. The total increase in cost to graduate student is $84.42 for the academic year. Next slide.
That's total, that's not per.
That's the total for the year, on average. Well, it's based on the average that our students take. Our students, undergraduate, on average take about 13 hours per semester. Next slide. These are the increases to the non-mandatory fees, the other things that students pay for for their living expenses if they choose to on campus. The meal plan increase averages out to be about a 41-cent per meal increase. The housing increase in the basic double occupancy rate is an increase of 1.58%. Those were approved also at an earlier Board of Trustee meeting. The entire average for the housing system, I think, was around 2%. Just as just to kind of put that in perspective, the national average increase for utilities last year to this year alone was 4.4%. So our folks are trying to do a good job of keeping the housing rates down. On the meal plan, there's one other thing to note, and I don't know that Janice was able to hit this highlight, but there was legislation passed to exempt students from sales tax on the purchase of meal plans. We've been engaged in conversations with the Department of Revenue on how to implement that. If we're successful getting that going, the 12-meal plan will come down to $17.70, and the 5-meal plan will come down to $7.30. So there'll be some savings in both of those categories thanks to that legislation. One last slide before any other questions. This is the third time repeat fee, which is also a non-mandatory fee. It's calculated by the Board of Governors. It's posted in our regulation based on what they tell us to put in there. And we have the international student fee. There's no change there. That fee, you may recall, helps us offset the cost of our tracking systems for international students. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to entertain any questions. And I guess I should mention that the regulation has been posted since May, let me find my date, May 8th, and been out for the requisite number of days, and there have been no comments.
Other comments, questions? All right, hearing no comments, I'd like a motion to approve the proposed amendment to UWF Regulation 4.008, tuition and fees, fine and penalties as set forth in the documentation provided to the board. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Oh, don't go away.
She knows that.
Next is the estimated 2014 annual budget.
Our budget office and the budget officers across campus engage in a process of gathering budget information and compiling it for the funds of auxiliaries and contracts and fees. They look at historical information as well as projections from those frontline budget managers to come up with those estimated budgets. As you see in the education in general category, that reflects the same $127 million budget that the President spoke at length about. That budget does not include the $20 million for Virtual Florida, and it does not include the $3.8 million that is currently being held back that will be earned back through the improvement plan. We would hope that you could approve this estimated budget. We will, allowing for or authorizing the President to make modifications as necessary. We will submit it to the Board of Governors by the August deadline.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the estimated operating budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015 for both appropriated and non-appropriated funds, and to authorize the President to make subsequent changes to the budget as needed, including the changes between the estimated budget and the budget to be submitted to the Florida Board of Governors by August 2014, and other changes during the fiscal year. Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
Have a motion, and a second, discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. I'd now like to call on Anita Schoenberger, Cindy Faria, and Marshall Seymour for a presentation on the AFSCME agreement.
Good morning. Before you are the members of the AFSCME, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Bargaining Team for you, Board of Trustees. Cindy Faria, Marshall Seymour, Marshals and Utilities, Cindy's in Human Resources, and I'm one of your attorneys. We began bargaining with AFSCME in about July 2013 for a successor agreement. A successor agreement is an agreement that follows the last agreement. Our last agreement was due to expire in 2012. We agreed with AFSCME to extend it until the successor agreement was ratified. We concluded our negotiations in January 2014 with AFSCME, and the AFSCME employees ratified the agreement just recently, June 2nd. 23 employees voted, 21 voted for the agreement. The agreement makes the 6 changes that are on the list before you. Most of them are housekeeping types of changes. We removed some obsolete language related to a transition period for the previous agreement. We changed some work unit definitions to remove areas that no longer exist, such as printing, landscaping, and vehicle maintenance. We changed the name of the West Florida Historic Preservation, Inc. to the UWF Historic Trust. We made a change related to layoffs. There was a requirement that the university make efforts to find alternate employment for employees that were being laid off. We found that what was really happening was that employees were going to human resources for employment counseling, so we changed the agreement to reflect the reality. And in addition, related to layoffs, there is a system of retention points when we need to determine, which is used when we need to determine which employees will be laid off if, in fact, we don't need to lay off everybody in an area. The retention points gives credit for seniority and other types of service, and the parties agreed to a deduction in retention points for those employees that had disciplinary actions in their work history. Another change that we made was to add a designee for purposes of consultation with AFSCME so that the president herself didn't always have to be the person they would consult with, and she could delegate or designate someone to handle that in her stead. And the last thing we did was make date changes to conform to the new agreement.
This conference has been running for an
If you have any questions, please let me know.
Are there any questions? All right, I'd like to ask for a motion to ratify the 2014 through 2016 collective bargaining agreement between the University of West Florida Board of Trustees and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees as set forth in the documentation provided to the board.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. Provost Saunders, would you please present us with the 2015 academic calendar?
No. But Ann Desiden will.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Desiden, the registrar. We're glad to see you this morning. I am coming to present the 2015-16 academic calendar for the academic year, which needs approval from the Board of Trustees to submit to the Board of Governors office. It follows the rules of the Board of Governors rules for university calendars, which have specific requirements which were attached in your documentation. So other than that, it's fairly simple. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Unless we have ice storms or whatever.
Correct. One of the changes we have made, and that's right, as of last year, we are allowed to include partial Saturdays, and we only included a few, so we now included a few more, so that if our schedule gets interrupted, we do have some makeup days in there.
Really? Huh. Any questions?
Great.
Comments? All right, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the academic calendar for 2015-16 as presented, effective academic year 2015-16. Have a motion. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those like say.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board? Beginning at 1 p.m., members of the board will meet with the Chancellor and Board of Governors Chair regarding UWF's 2014-15 improvement plan in the College of Business Dean's Conference Room, which is Building 76A, Room 336. This is a notice of public meeting. I'd like to remind you of the Joint Board's Appreciation Reception and Dinner at Scenic Hills tonight with social starting at 5:30. Dinner will be at 6 p.m. Tomorrow we have the Joint Board's Strategic Planning Retreat at UWF Conference Center at 8:30 a.m. Business is casual dress. The dress is casual. On August 14th, we have a 9 a.m. Board of Trustees committee meetings at Scenic Hills. And on the 9th of September at 9 a.m., Board of Trustee Conference Center for Board of Trustee meeting. September 17th and 18th will be UWF will host the Board of Governors meeting here in the Conference Center. We'd now like to go into a closed session, and if you would, I'd like to ask the Board of Trustees to stay at the table and ask everybody else to please exit the room.
Enjoy lunch.
And enjoy our lunch.
Enjoy lunch. Leave a little.